Welcome to the TREPX Podcast. TREP is short for entrepreneur. One of the most meaningful and rewarding, yet difficult challenges you can take on. The TREPX Podcast gives you actionable insights, real examples, and success X factors from experienced entrepreneurs as we are learning, living, and sharing in the exciting endeavor of entrepreneurship. Now here's your fellow entrepreneurial traveler and host, Micky Deming.
Hello, this is Micky Deming. Welcome to the TREPX Podcast, where we talk every single week with successful entrepreneurs. This podcast is all about helping you as an entrepreneur grow beyond where you are today. I think everyone looks at their business that way, where, how can I take a step forward? How can I move one little bit forward to get some momentum? And I think one of the best ways to figure out how to do that is to get out of your own mind and hear from people who have done it before, who have already been there. And so our goal is to chat with people who have been there to not only learn from their experience, but to learn practical applications that they can help us implement in our own businesses. Today is no exception. I had a chance to interview Kim Ades from Frame of Mind Coaching. She is an expert in the mental aspect of entrepreneurship, which is the most critical part of entrepreneurship, because if you can't get yourself in the right mindset, the right frame of mind, as Kim would say, you are always going to be limited. And no matter how much skill you have, that will not replace having the mental ability to grow. And so this interview is awesome. I loved what Kim had to say about emotional resilience. That is a key phrase you'll hear coming up throughout this. And for her, she says that is one of the biggest differentiators for successful people versus people that are not. It's people that have emotional resilience, the ability to get stronger when they run into adversity. So I'm grateful for Kim taking the time. This was an awesome interview. Please check out her website at frameofmindcoaching.com and learn all that she has to provide. And of course, you can see this interview at trepxgroup.com. While you're there, definitely check out what we have going on at trepxgroup.com/accounting. If accounting is something that you struggle with, we have a pretty awesome solution to make it a lot simpler. So check that out. But before you do that, definitely listen to this interview, get yourself in the right frame of mind so that you can be ready to take yourself to the next level. So thanks so much to Kim. Please enjoy this interview with Kim Ades. Hello, Kim. Welcome to the TREPX Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great and super, super happy to be talking to you.
Oh, that's good. I love it. I love hearing that. I don't want people to be like, I don't want to talk to this guy right now. So I hope you mean that with all your heart.
I really do.
Good. I'm excited to talk to you too. I think there is a lot to learn from what you're doing, and even just as I've dug into your website and read some of the stuff you've written, it's just like there's a lot to take from it. So I'm pumped to dive in. And I think a good place to start is just at a big picture level. Your core business is Frame of Mind Coaching. So can you just share with everyone what that's all about?
What the heck do you do? Really, we coach very high-end, high-profile entrepreneurs, the corporate people, innovators. We coach people who are determined to really live an extraordinary life and make the most out of their lives. And what we do is we look at how their thinking either propels them forward or holds them back. And we use the process that I created that includes journaling and phone calls and a certain framework that allows us to really dig deep into a person's thinking patterns and identify how their thinking is working for them or really against them.
Ooh, I like that. I want to dive in and learn about this framework. But first I'll ask, how did you come up with that? What experiences led to you developing this?
Well, the first experience was that I used to own another company. I'm this serial entrepreneur kind of person. And we used to build simulation-based assessments. And the purpose of those assessments was to help companies make better hiring decisions. And so we created this assessment that would determine who is a top performer in any field, in any industry, for any position. And what we discovered was that, for different positions, intelligence was more important than others. And for certain positions, social skills were more important than others. But in all positions, there was one real finding that we extracted that kind of superseded everything. And that was, if a person had a high degree of emotional resilience, they were going to be much more likely to succeed significantly better than anyone else.
Wow.
And so that was a very, very crucial finding, because what we realized is, like, where are we teaching people to build their emotional resilience? Not anywhere, really. Even in the coaching world, coaching up until recently has been highly focused on helping people take actions in order to reach their goals. It wasn't really focused on emotional resilience. So that was part A. Part B was, and before I get to part B, when we look at what is emotional resilience,
I was going to ask that.
Right?
Yes.
What is that? It's really the ability to bounce back from adversity with speed and agility and leverage the adversity.
Wow.
So the idea is, when something bad happens to you, what's your response? What's your reaction?
Right.
How far do you fall? How quickly do you get back up? And what do you do with that experience? How do you make sense of it? How do you take it and package it and run with it? And so those people who are able to package it and run with it in a useful manner get a lot further.
So when you were digging in and coming up with this framework for assessing talent and people's likelihood of success, that was the one thing that you really were seeing, that no matter what people's position, no matter what their skill set, no matter what they were going through, if they had this emotional resilience, the ability to bounce back, that was the thing you felt like no matter where they were, that made a huge difference in their success.
Massive difference. And it's a massive difference not only in their professional success, but in the quality of their relationships, in their health, in their attitude, in their happiness, in their overall well-being.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So at what point, so you had this great idea and this framework, at what point did you realize, like, I want this to be a business. I want everybody to learn this.
Well, what happened, of course, was that I had my own adversity, and it was a tough time. Like, I own this business, and one of my partners was my ex-husband, is now my ex-husband. And so, I just went through a really, really tough time. Not only did my marriage fall apart, my business had to be divided, and I had to sell it off. And I found myself suddenly as a single parent, not knowing anything about the dating world. And like, my whole entire life got disrupted and completely challenged. And so how did I cope with that? I read everything I could about personal development, marriage, relationships, everything I could get my hands on. And the second thing I did was I journaled. I journaled a lot. And the reason I journaled was because I had a lot of very, very intense feelings. I was scared. I was disappointed. I was fearful. I was pissed off at the world. I was nervous, unsure, all those things. And so my journaling, in a way, was a source of oxygen for me, because I would write down what I felt, and that would kind of release things, make it a little bit more bearable. And then the critical part here is, then I would say, okay, so these are all the ways that I'm feeling now. Where do I want to go? How do I want to be feeling? What kind of relationship do I want to have? What kind of job do I want to have? What do I want my life to be like? And that act of turning things around or pivoting towards what I wanted was so crucial to my, let's call it, faster recovery.
That's really fascinating. I am intrigued by this. And here's what I like about it, is because I think so many people, and this happens, I see this in myself too, is that we at all costs try to avoid any type of conflict, any type of setback. And it's not like we should plunge ourselves directly into setbacks or challenges, but I think we hurt ourselves because we're not emotionally resilient, that we are like, I just want my life to be as comfortable and as easy as possible, because and that's kind of our way of dealing with it. And it's like, if you're confident that when you run into setbacks you can get better, I think that even when things are going well, it kind of frees you up in how you can attack everything you're doing.
Well, that's right. We're looking for smooth rides, right? The turbulence creates fear and nervousness for us. And it's something we do try to avoid at all costs. And so the idea is like, I mean, when we're flying, we often go through turbulence, literally, but we don't freak out. I mean, we might get a little nervous, but we don't freak out. We know, like, okay, it's part of the ride. There's bumps sometimes, no worries. Yeah. Like, we're going to get there in 99.9% of the cases. And so if we can really look at the turbulence in our lives in a similar way, that would make a huge difference for us. But we don't. We don't.
Yeah, like, I mean, wouldn't you say, is smooth just a myth? Like, is that even really a possibility in life?
Well, whether it's a myth or not, it doesn't matter. But smooth is not necessarily useful, right? It's overrated. Right. And
that's true. It's boring.
Well, it's boring. Somebody asked me on one of these podcasts the other day, like, how does one acquire balance? I'm like, why is that something that people are after? If you go to a playground and you go to the seesaw, what happens when the seesaw is perfectly in balance? What happens?
Something has to tip one way or the other.
Well, nothing happens when it's perfectly in balance. Right? There's no movement. Right. There's no momentum. There's no action. There's no physical activity. There's nothing going on. And so, I think balance is not necessarily what we're after. What we're after is engagement. We're after passion. We're after being turned on. We're after being fully engaged and present. That's a little bit different from balance.
That's great. That's a great point. So now the next natural question that a lot of people would come up with is, you came to this assumption not only that emotional resilience is very, very important and critical to success, but then taking it a step further, that it can be taught and that it can be learned, that it can be improved. And a lot of people, I think, that's one of those things. It's like, I'm wired this way. This is how I react. This is how I am. So how did you come to the conclusion that you could actually teach it to others?
Well, the conclusion was that if we can really see the way people think and identify the patterns that they tend to fall into and illuminate those patterns, show them their tendencies and demonstrate how some of these tendencies create negative outcomes for them, simply being informed and aware automatically changes the course. And if we take it one step further, replacing the pattern with something slightly more useful makes a massive difference in people's lives.
Interesting. Yeah. And so what are some of the patterns? Like what are some of the common patterns that people fall into who haven't been through any type of this training when they hit resilience? What negative patterns do they fall into?
So what we're looking at is, where do you experience frustration, resistance, anger, disappointment, any negative feeling? Where do you experience that? And normally what we do is, when we coach people, we ask them to journal in an online journal, and they're journaling every single day for the duration of the coaching period. And the journal goes to the coach, and the coach reads and responds to the journal. But what the coach is doing is extracting data and picking up patterns and connecting dots that don't necessarily easily seem like they go together. Right? And so, what do we see in terms of what patterns do we pick up is that people have experienced things in the past and they carry those experiences to the present. And those past experiences will debilitate them, will hold them back. They've been brought up with certain ideologies or beliefs that they can't shake. And those ideologies prevent them from stepping into the things that they really, really want and love. It could be as simple as you're interested in starting a business, but you have all these reasons why that's impossible. Well, I can't leave my full-time job. I need that ongoing salary. I can't take that leap. It's impossible. It's too risky. I have responsibilities. I have kids to take care of. I have dependents who are really counting on me to pay the bills, etc. I don't have the resources. I don't have the experience. I don't have all the knowledge I need. I'm really good at this one thing, but I don't know how to run a whole business, and on and on and on and on. And what you find is, those are the stories that we tell ourselves that really hold us hostage and prevent us from taking action. Now, the last thing I want someone to do is just take action anyway. What I want them to do, because if they do, they'll set themselves up for greater disappointment, because their belief is that they're going to fail. And we always, always prove our beliefs to be accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want anybody to take action when they're loaded up with ideas that say this isn't going to work. What I want them to do is start to identify those thoughts, those beliefs that say this isn't, I'm not totally lined up with this goal. I'm afraid. Okay, what are you afraid of? Let's address that. And when your thinking can be lined up with your goal, then you can experience massive success. And as long as your thinking clashes with the goal, you'll bump into problems.
Right. Yeah, I think it all ties together in everything you're saying, and just this idea of emotional resilience, and I have the ability to, when things knock me backward, to turn that into a strength. And then also I have this ability to just understand my own thoughts and to get a handle on them, and how important that is for, like, when you set a goal, like, you're right. If I don't really believe in my ability to achieve that goal, then what's the point of making that a goal? It needs to connect with the thoughts that you have. And so I think this is all good. And so I'm just curious, like, what are some of the things people can do to start to train themselves, start to improve, start to get a handle on their own emotions and the way they respond to situations?
I would say that the single most important starting point is to take stock of where you are right now. A critical piece to the puzzle is figure out, where am I now? And we always talk about what goals you want to achieve. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Like, what are your ambitions? What that type of thing. And I think that that's a good question to ask, but it's a secondary question to ask. The real question is, are you happy with where you are right now? And if not, let's identify where you're unhappy and what thinking causes that unhappiness. So taking a snapshot, right? Taking an assessment of where you are right here, right now, with all kinds of areas in your life is super important.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like, how often do you recommend people do that?
Well, you have to start with today, and then say, okay, so there are some places in my life where, I want things to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question becomes, how am I thinking about these things how is my thinking preventing me from having it the way I want it to be?
Yeah, no, that's great. And so, and then as you do that and you start to uncover, gosh, I'm really negative around these people, or whatever, lots of different eye-opening pieces come together. What are some of the ways to move forward and some of the, like, day-to-day practices? I know journaling, you talked about that. I think that's really intriguing.
Well,
as a way to force you to process what you're going through. How does that fit into the...
So let me how about, with your permission, can I give everybody a journaling exercise?
That would be great.
So here's something that's super powerful. And you start off with, there are 3 questions. So the first question is, what do I really, really want? Like, more than anything, what do I want? And that thing, or those things, can be physical things. They can be achievement-oriented things. They can be relationship things. So tangible or intangible, what do I really want? And why do I want these things? Right? Why are these things attractive and desirable to me? The second question is, what would my life be like if I never had those things? Would that be okay with me? Could I live with it? Is that tolerable? Is that, okay for me? And the third question is, what's preventing me from having what I really, really want right now? Now, that third question is super important. Why? Because that's the question that starts to identify the thinking and the beliefs that are standing in your way. And the answers to those questions, let me assure you, are all invented. We invent the reasons. We make them up. We use them as our reality, as our excuse for not living the life we really want to live.
Right. I like that. Yeah. It's like when you identify, and just to recap, what do I really want? Why do I want that? What if I didn't have that thing I wanted? And then finally, what is preventing me from getting it? And I think that question is really important because, even if there is something that is preventing you, like, just defining it, I think a lot of times makes it a whole lot less intimidating or, like, insurmountable. Like, you can actually see it on paper and think, okay, how do I get around that?
Right. And what I want to say is, if anybody who's listening does this exercise, I will personally review it with you. So send it to me and we will hop on a quick phone call and we'll look at it together, and I will give you my own time, because if you've taken the time to do this, it means you are serious about moving forward.
That's cool. And do you have for the what do I really want, is there a recommended like time frame? Because sometimes people, it's like something 20 years in the future, or or like,
what do I want right now? What do I want? What do I want to have in my life? What would I like to have in my life right now?
Boom. And then what's stopping you? And then we're going to send it to you. I'm going to take you up on that. So
perfect.
You're going to coach me and I'm going to be more emotionally resilient. I'm excited about that. Okay. This is good. I think this is extremely helpful, extremely practical. And just my question to you is, for people, because my thought would be that the reason people don't do these things is because they just keep moving forward. Like, we're so busy and we just are distracted or moving forward, and we don't even take the time. Do you think that's really the issue? People don't
forward. They're just spinning.
Just spinning. That's a good point.
Right? Like, people live unconsciously. Like, they're walking, but they're like zombies.
You're right.
They're not going anywhere in particular. It's, they get up, they go to work, they come home, they watch TV, they go to bed, they get up, they go to work, they watch TV. Like, it's the same life over and over and over again. And it's the person who is determined to have a little bit more, to really kind of milk their lives, that takes a moment to say, hold on a minute here. This lifestyle of mine, this way of living isn't enough for me. It's not all that I want. I want more.
I like that. Yeah. And that actually leads me to my follow-up question, because the model that you have coaches who then coach people through this process and help them. And there's different, I guess, versions of it. And so I'm curious if you've gotten this feedback from your coaches, like, what is it that puts people over the edge? Like, what motivates them to take action? Is it like most people that are like hitting a really, really low place? Like, what is the common motivator for people to say, okay, I want to go through something like this?
The motivator is a real realization of where they are now, and that the place they are now is not really what they want for themselves. And it's that decision that says, I would not be happy if I didn't have the things I really want. That would not be okay for me. And
gotcha.
And I'm making a decision that says my life is important in my life. Right? So people do all kinds of things, like they spend money on vacations and they buy luxury items and they go out to eat and they do all these things, and all these things are fine, but they have a short enjoyment factor, right?
Yeah.
And what this really is a change that is sustainable, that makes a massive difference over the long haul.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, it all ties in together. I mean, the way we talk about it around here is just to be intentional. I think that's exactly what you're talking about, is like, are you being intentional? It doesn't mean that everything's going to work perfectly. And that's like what you said at the beginning, like when things go wrong, when things go off, if you're still intentional about where this is all going, then you're going to be better equipped to respond to adversity, to the things that go wrong. Is that really how you approach that, the emotional resilience aspect of it, and how to deal with setbacks?
Well, I love the word intentionality. I mean, that's a huge part of it. And it's also really building a muscle of interpretation. So things happen to you, and the way you interpret those events will determine your measure of emotional resilience. And so it's catching yourself when you're interpreting things in such a way that doesn't serve you, and saying, hold on, this is in my control. I'm not a passive participant in my life, and I don't have to be.
That's great. Right? Do you think that this really comes down to, and I think journaling probably helps with this, that probably the missing piece for a lot of people is just that ability to pull themselves out of their mind, out of their life, and kind of look at it as an outsider, because like you were saying, like, people aren't moving forward. They're just kind of scrambling, like going scattered and in this routine that's going nowhere. And I think that just happens because we're just so in it every day. And it's like, really, if you're able to pull yourself out of your mind and look at it objectively, you can start to piece some of these things together.
Yes, and it's about making choices, right? So when you can see what you're doing and you can understand the relationship between your thinking, your actions, and your outcomes, and you can say, hold on a second, that's not where I'm heading. That's not what I really wanted. What I really wanted was this other thing. When you can start to become conscious about that, you can start to shift your focus and then your actions and move towards those things that you really want.
That makes perfect sense. I love it. So as we start to wrap this up, I think people will have a lot to think about as they hear this episode. And I know there are so many people that are just moving day by day, and there's not a lot of intentionality, not a lot of purpose, or they feel just kind of stuck. I think this will help a ton. So to conclude, like, what is one thing that someone can do right now to start to get a better sense of who they are, where they're at, and what they need to do to go forward?
Again, I mean, I want to invite everybody to take an assessment. We have an assessment on our website. It's called Assess Your Frame of Mind. But just taking stock of where you are right now is the best first thing for anybody to do, to say, like, are things okay? Or am I kind of walking through my life with a blindfold on? And that action of assessing where you are allows you for a moment to take off the blindfold and say, where do I want to go now?
That's fantastic. This is great. This is really eye-opening and extremely helpful. Really appreciate you being on, Kim. Where can everybody find out more about the great stuff you're doing and do these assessments?
frameofmindcoaching.com. On the website, there's a ton of information. There's blogs. There's a free ebook. There's the assessment. So go and do all that. And then I offered before to read anybody's little journaling assignment that I gave you. Send it to me. It's kim@frameofmindcoaching.com.
Very cool. We will take you up on that, and I will have all the instructions on the website on how everyone can do that. So very cool, and I appreciate you making that offer. Thanks so much for joining us, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It was great.
Thank you for listening to the TREPX Podcast. For more episodes, interviews, and business growth tools, please visit trepxgroup.com.